Buffalo Bills come out on top of the Ravens in one of the most ridiculous games I've watched in my lifetime. This week on the Wandering Buffalo podcast.
You're now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your host, Justin Goddard.
Bills Mafia, welcome in to another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network. My name is Justin, and I'm your host today. And just the way we drew it up, right? Never in doubt. One of the craziest, maybe the craziest game that I've watched over my lifetime as a Bills fan. And I have to say, just my overwhelming first takeaway from this game, maybe favorite part of this game, is the feeling of being on the other side of this. And it's kind of such a ridiculous thing for me to try to wrap my head around. Like, the Bills have had close wins. They've had, fourth quarter comebacks, all that type of stuff. It's not, as much as we suffered through playoff droughts and all that, it's not like we were devoid of close nail-biter wins, but the ridiculous nature of how the win happened, I can't remember too many games where we're on this side of it. And you can run down the list of the countless examples of these losses happening to us, right? Hail Murray, 13 seconds, the Denver game, Music City Miracle, going all the way back. They just keep going. The Vikings game. There's so many examples of us being on the other side of a game like this, and getting to the end of that game, I didn't even know how to process it. Was waiting for another shoe to drop, or just crazy. And I'm recording this on Wednesday. I'm, days removed from it, and it still feels kind of surreal. And just really happy to be able to come out of week one, not only 1-0, but obviously a super long season, and we'll see how everything shakes out in the end. But there's a good chance that Buffalo and Baltimore are fighting it out for the 1 seed by the end of the season. And I don't love in sports media broadcasting how hyperbolic they can get from play to play in a game, and how critical things are, especially when we're talking early in the season. But that team that Baltimore assembled is no joke. Team that Bills put together, no joke. And depending on how everything shakes out and what the seeding and matchup, blah blah blah, there's a good chance, like I said, they're duking it out for the 1 seed. There's a good chance that we see them again in the playoffs, and just a huge win. I started off the show saying just how we drew it up. It wasn't always enjoyable to watch this game. There was 3 different times where I was like, well, that's it. That's the nail in the coffin, and just kept fighting, kept trying to keep a chance. And, as miserable as the defense was for the majority of the game, came up with some huge stops in the end game sequence of this game. And, kind of a script that we've gotten used to, of the defense giving up a ton, but making clutch plays in clutch moments, forcing turnovers, getting the ball back to Josh Allen. And against all odds, Bills are able to come out on top of this one. And I do want to start off talking about Sean McDermott just for a second in this game, and kind of discussing the culture that he builds. And these hot button phrases that are his, key focal points that we kind of get tired of hearing. There's a lot of coaches around this league that the way that game was going, that their teams aren't fighting and clawing the way the Bills were in the fourth quarter of this game. A couple of the moments where I'm sitting on the couch feeling like that was the nail in the coffin. There's a lot of teams in the league that are like, you know, in particular, the Bills scored to get it back to a one-score game, and, like, immediately after, Baltimore comes back and scores again, and we're sitting with, like, 5 minutes left in the game. It's 2 scores again. There's a lot of teams that pack it in, so kudos to Sean McDermott for the way he keeps the team fighting. The belief from the team, like, we have Josh Allen, we have a chance, and to just play that full 60 minutes to have an opportunity at the end. Defensively, big mess. Start out giving a shout out to Ed Oliver, maybe the best game I've ever seen him play. He was an absolute monster in this game. The things that show up on the stat sheet, the tackles for loss, the huge forced fumble on Derrick Henry to give the Bills that last opportunity. Just an absolutely stellar game from Ed Oliver. And then the rest of the defense, it is very easy to come away from this game like full-fledged panic, right? And this is kind of an area where I'm cautiously optimistic in that if you listen to the show, if you heard my thoughts on this, what to expect from the defense this year, I've kind of been talking recently about expect your warts, expect the tough games early in the season, going all the way back to when the schedule came out, not wanting to see Baltimore in week 1. I think there's just so much new on this defense. We have rookies that we're relying on to play roles. You have injuries going into this game where you have Dorian Strong starting. I mean, he's, maybe started this offseason as your CB4 all the way up to CB1. We had injuries with Bishop being under-repped. We had all kinds of guys missing time throughout training camp. Joey Bosa. You factor in the suspensions for Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt. All of those things that I think go a long way to playing their best defense against a team like Baltimore. And, it's easy to look at these long Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson runs, and it's super frustrating to watch live. It's horrible game script to be a fan while it's happening against you, but kind of looking at what the Bills are built for, how they typically play Baltimore, this game wasn't too far different from what the script usually looks like. It's usually, we're going to dare you to beat us on the ground. We're going to limit what Lamar Jackson does, and hopefully, we let up 200, 250 yards rushing, and we're counting on our guy on the other side to be able to put up more offense than your best day on the ground. And like I said, it's hard to watch. It's infuriating at times, but this is the last 3-4 times we've beaten the Ravens. It's looked very similar in that we try to limit our mistakes, keep the game close, capitalize on a mistake or two that the Ravens make, and have Josh Allen pull some heroics out to finish off the game. And maybe there's a point in time where that script doesn't work, but as frustrating as it is to watch, it has worked. Now, like I said, I'm not going to be sky is falling after looking at this defensive performance. I think for the way the Bills and many teams around the league, they're built more for limiting the passing game. It's become a passing league, and Baltimore is a super unique two-headed monster between Lamar and Derrick Henry that you'll see something similar with the Jets in Breece Hall and Justin Fields, but it's like the super diet version of this. There's not really another team in the league that plays football on offense like the Baltimore Ravens. The bright side is you got that one out of your system. You got a ton of coaching film to work with while you get to enjoy being 1-0. So, like I said, I was never really expecting this defense to look like the best version of itself till somewhere around Thanksgiving time. And I think that's exactly what we saw here. Again, getting into the matchup, the team doesn't invest in giant run stopping one techs. Even the Giants that they put on their team are more 3-tech penetration style to get after passers. Our linebackers are matchup linebackers. They're not hulking, thumping linebackers that are going to meet a Derrick Henry in the hole and stop them one-on-one. So like I said, there's a lot of stuff that feels really concerning about this game coming out of it. I think there's also room for encouragement as we move through the season. Like I said, we have those suspensions for Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt. I think they factor into this defense. They're coming back week 7 by week. They're back week 6 by week 7. Trade deadline week 8. There's time to tinker with this roster by the time you get to that stage in the game, and maybe we see some even more additions to the defense if it's kind of not up to snuff at that juncture. The good news in the meantime is it looks like the offense might have to score a boatload of points to get the Bills winning games, at least in the beginning stages of this season. And the good news is we saw that on full display against the Ravens Sunday night. Obviously coming off arguably the best offense the Bills have had in the history of the organization last year, and kind of picked up where they last left off. And what I will say in this game is there was a beginning part of the game where it was I was texting some of my friends, my brothers and whatnot, about some of this early misdirection, get the ball out quick to the other side, and the offense kind of reminding me of like the Tom Brady Patriots of, we're going to use a lot of motion. We're going to make you think something's going one way. We're flipping it back the other way. And something that I've wanted to see from this offense for a long time of, just because you have Josh Allen as a unicorn doesn't mean that you need to just have him go be a hero on every play. And seeing him work within structure and these easy button throws and getting the ball into the playmaker's hands, it was great to see early. We saw 2 running backs on the field, saw tons of different formations, different personnel being used. And then it got to a little bit of a point where, the lead was kind of expanding for the Ravens. Our defense wasn't stopping them at all. Our offense stalled out on a couple drives, and we were seeing more of this. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we can open it up a little bit. And there was a bit of a frustration for me in that. And then that was in the moment, there was a bit of a frustration of, okay, well, when are we going to open it up? And then having rewatched the game, it kind of feels like that game script conversation that we started earlier of basically just from a game plan perspective of knowing that you don't match up super well against the Ravens defensively and trying to kind of take your time on offense, eat some clock, limit the possessions that the Ravens get, keep it close, force a mistake, and capitalize on that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of this. I think there was even a quote from Joshua Palmer from this game of like him talking on the sideline about like, okay, but when are we gonna turn around? When are we gonna unleash Josh Allen basically? And as much as a fan, we want to see that what we saw in the fourth quarter from Josh Allen all game, every game. I think there is some room for this type of game plan of we're going to stay within structure. We're going to take what the defense is giving us. We're going to make the smart, correct decisions with the football. We're going to protect it, and we're going to let them make the mistake. And if we're getting into crunch time and we need Josh Allen hero ball, we know that he has it in him. And all of a sudden he erupts for 250 yards and some just absolute piss missiles in the fourth quarter to come away and win this game. And I think when you're realistically looking at how games in the NFL are won and lost, and how many games are one score games and really close to it coming down the stretch, I think we can see that maybe more games in the NFL are lost than they're actually won. And that being, we've all done this in men, right? You're winning a game, you get the ball back with 2 minutes left, you got a 4-point lead, and you want to throw a couple Hail Marys to get one more score, and you throw a pick six, and all of a sudden you lost the game. And obviously, hyperbolic version of it, of chucking Hail Marys. But a game like this, where the Bills haven't been able to stop Derrick Henry all game, and what becomes the most pivotal turning point in this game, a fumble by the guy that they couldn't stop all game that puts the Bills in position to finish out the game. So against lesser opponents, maybe we see some more decisive wins. I would expect something more similar to this on a less outrageous scale of we're going to continue giving Josh easy button throws, and, for the 5, 6, 7 critical plays of a game where, things might break down and he's got to do something outstanding out of structure. Let him do it then. Know that he can do it then. But in the meantime, keep the offense on schedule, limit mistakes, protect the ball, lean into an awesome run game with an awesome offensive line, and pivot there quickly to James Cook. Seen some, commentary about him not being super effective in this game and whatnot. I'll say I feel like he made the most of his touches running against a really good Baltimore defense, and in particular defensive line. Travis Jones in there, nose tackle, he's a run stopper. And this a play that I feel like kind of gets lost in this game, maybe because he got stopped just short of scoring, but I believe it was a 3rd and 6, and there's a little like screen pass, swing pass over to Cook, and he makes a beautiful cut to make a guy miss, gets skinny between another defender, and ends up taking it 40-something yards, whatever it was, down to the 1-yard line that leads to a Bills touchdown. I think that's something that we talked a lot about in the offseason, of that playmaking ability that doesn't exist from a ton of guys on this roster. And that kind of being my argument for wanting to get a Cook deal done, even if it was more than I would like to pay a running back, because I don't think you have a myriad of guys on this team that have that explosive playmaking ability. And it might not be that, you know, running between the tackles, he's snapping off a 30-yard touchdown run every week, but it can be in the passing game. It can be a run that he breaks. There's an element to him that on any given play, he can take one the distance. And like I said, not a ton of guys on this team with that skill set. So for me, on display, week one of why you bring a guy like that back. Wide receiver production, I thought this was nice to see. That it was spread out. You were getting contributions from your top guys. Joshua Palmer making some clutch plays. You had Keon Coleman have a great game, and really the Bills lean into the skill set of what he does best. And what I think was most encouraging to see in this game was Coleman working back to the ball, getting available for Josh Allen when the play breaks down. And I think there's been some comparisons between Keon Coleman and Gabe Davis, and like not being the best separators and not being the quickest guys, and kind of being more straight line speed than short area quickness. But this was like the super high end version of Gabe Davis for me. And what I always loved about Gabe Davis in Buffalo is the way that he worked with Josh Allen off script when the play breaks down. And I think that between Joshua Palmer, between Shakir, between the tight ends, you have the guys that can be those receiving weapons in the playbook when we're on schedule. And what I like seeing with the team is that guy that becomes quarterback friendly when the play is breaking down. We know how dangerous Josh Allen is when he breaks the pocket, when he's on the move, when he's, keeping the play alive and holding on to the ball for 4 or 5 seconds, in the way he's able to find guys down the field when you're asking cornerbacks to cover these dudes for 4 or 5 seconds. So not only a huge game statistically for Coleman, but it was really encouraging and exciting for me to see, week one, you could kind of like palpably feel the connection growing between Coleman and Allen. And talked about it a lot on this show too. The Keon Coleman before the injury last year was fantastic. He was, the efficiency of it may not always look great because a lot of his stuff is downfield and lower percentage throws, but his receiving yards, his touchdowns, all that was right up there with the top rookie receivers last year. Had the injury, came back, and it just wasn't the same down the stretch. The offense kind of figured out how they were going to work without him while he was gone, and kind of just kept that rolling. And to just see that connection on display, I know it's only week one, a lot of football to play, but it was really encouraging to see. The last thing I want to wrap up with is the tight ends, which I thought we had tremendous roles for each of the tight ends in this game. Dawson Knox getting it started. catch and run for a first down early in the game. We saw Dalton Kincaid looking good as a blocker in space. Also had a touchdown, had some clutch catches. And how about Jackson Hawes? I mean, looking like every bit of the billing that we got as a blocker. But what that catch? 29-yard missile from Josh Allen in a clutch moment. Young man stepping up and making a play. And we've heard next to nothing about what he brings to the table as a receiver. It's not exactly his skill set. It's not what he's known for. It's not what you want to be expecting from him week in and week out. But what have we always said about when Quentin Morris was on the team? That he was only going to get a few catches a year, but they always ended up being like some touchdown in a clutch moment that you're trying to figure out who just caught that ball, and it's not even like one of the first 7, 8, 9 names that would have been on your radar. So to me, that was kind of your upside with Quentin Morris is a few clutch catches a year, and you drastically upgraded the blocking, put those two skill sets together, and he's going to end up being one of my favorite players on the team. I can feel it already. Yeah, and one more thing on that play is in the rewatch, you see Keon Coleman running an underneath route, and there's probably not a defender within 7 yards of him in any direction. And the moxie, the trust, the belief, the gunslinger in Josh Allen to turn down, that safer play, to put faith in Jackson Hawes in that moment and have him come away with a huge catch for Josh Allen. Just awesome to see. Like I said, there's a ton to not like about this game. Don't want to put the blinders on. Ton of things to have some concerns about going forward. But at the same time, I can't think of a better way to open up the season, the final season in Highmark Stadium, to have, honestly, maybe the game of the year winner happen in week 1 against these two teams. But to have that much to put on film, to work on, to figure out, to improve, to have that dramatic of a win, be able to come away with that huge win early in the season. Almost skipped over my guy, Matt Prater here. Shout out to Matt Prater. Oldest player to ever put on a Bills jersey, coming in off the couch. Had 5 total opportunities to kick field goals between PATs and field goals. Hits all 5. As of today, no longer on the practice squad. He's officially on the 53-man roster. So shout out to Matt Prater, coming in on a Thursday, kicking on a Sunday, hearing stories come out. Guys thought he was a coaching addition, didn't even know who he was. Going from that on Thursday to a hometown hero, not hometown hero, you know what I'm saying, a local hero, kicking a game-winning field goal. The operation of that, so smooth. Shout out to Chris Tabor, to be able to have a running clock, run your field goal unit on, knock it through. Far cry from 12 men on the field in Denver. So, like I said, feel like we can take a nice little deep breath here. Next week, we are getting into playing against the Jets. Looked pretty good against Pittsburgh, shot themselves in the foot a little bit, but definitely doesn't look like the write-off game that they used to be for us. Different elements, like I said, a similar play style and offense to what we just saw in the Ravens. And again, not the best matchup for our defense. So hopefully, we'll get some stuff on film, correct some of the stuff that we're going to see the Jets tried to throw at us that we just saw with Baltimore. We'll be talking to you next week, hopefully discussing another win. Hopefully celebrating moving to 2-0 on the season. Made it this far. I do always ask that you like, share, subscribe, tell a friend about the show. It always helps us keep these episodes coming out every week. Appreciate you being here. We'll talk to you next week after the Jets game. Until then, and as always, go Bills.